blessed Holy Trinity for allowing us to gather here together today in His name. And we ask the Holy Trinity to lead, guide, and direct us to the right path we must take in order to gain the everlasting happiness of heaven. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Like I said, thank you all for coming. And some of this stuff, if you went to parochial school, from the get-go, some of this is probably going to be redundant. But I don't know if they're still teaching the same thing, probably not, that they taught when I was in parochial first grades. But about the first, this is the Catholic Church in the United States, Ponte de Leon. You heard that name? Mm-hmm. Okay, came to Florida. Okay, so this, like I said. And then Cortez went to Mexico. Right. Now, when Ponte de Leon came here, he didn't bring that many friars or little people with him, but then later on they came in and, I don't know, about 1513. Now, Cortez brought a lot of Franciscan and Dominican friars with him. About 1524, when they came with him on one of his other trips. I'm glad you made it.
Yes, I did.
Okay, and our first city was St. Augustine, Florida, as you all know. And it says the first Catholic school was in 1606, founded by the Franciscans. I didn't know that. Now, the missions that Cortez and the friars established, I have kind of a raspy throat this morning, in Texas and California. Has anyone seen the mission trail, been on the mission? What do you think of it?
Oh, it's amazing, it's wonderful.
I know, it's been
beautiful.
Many years since I saw it, and I was so affected by it. But the early missionaries, what they would do is it would be a 1 day's journey from point A to point B, and when nighttime fell, they stopped, and that's where they would build a new mission. And this is how the mission, and then they started up. The Alamo is one of them. That's what they did. And let's see, that the Alamo was founded in 1718, and there were 20 to 25 missions by 1791. In California, it was more or less the same thing, but it wasn't as well organized for some reason or other, I don't know. And if you notice in Texas, huh?
It's California.
They had weirdos then. But in the towns in Texas and California, if you notice, so many of the cities start out with San or Santa, so this Catholic oriented like that. And the missionaries, the Dominican, Franciscans, and the Jesuits. I can't believe the Jesuits are involved, but they did. I wrote a lot on Louisiana. I got it X'd out for some reason. I guess I didn't like it, whatever it was. But the Louisiana Territory, it's a mishmash. If you remember your early map of Louisiana down here, it went all the way to the Canadian border, and all the lands south of the Great Lakes between between the Great Lakes and Rocky Mountain and the Alleghenies eventually went to England. And France surrendered those territories east of the Mississippi to Great Britain well, let's see, I don't know. Louisiana became part of the U.S. in 1803. Now we're going to go to the individual cities. Maryland was founded, this was a Catholic state, founded by George Calvert. Calvert for the Catholics. And the Ursuline Sisters from France came there first in Maryland in 1727. And then they opened a girls' school in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's still in existence today, the same one that they opened up. The little nuns.
Did you say it's the first Catholic school, a Catholic university?
No, I don't think so.
I thought that's what you said.
University, I don't think so. Did I say, I didn't mean
Is
to.
it
but
the
I
first,
did.
the first Catholic school?
That's the school.
Yeah, under
The first Catholic school,
The reason why I ask is, William and Mary was actually established before Harvard. It just didn't open in time, and surely William and Mary would have been Catholic.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know if it still is, but it was.
Yeah, it was.
well, it says Charles Carroll started Georgetown College in 1789.
That's later, yeah. Yeah, much
Okay.
later. I didn't mean to
No, that's
disturb you,
okay.
I'm trying to
No,
talk to you, I just thought that.
If you see that I'm in error,
No, I'm just wondering if,
my first Catholic school says 1606.
William and Mary.
No.
No, it probably just, elementary.
It
It could be,
probably
yeah, you're
Yeah, I
right,
would
yeah.
say elementary.
Yeah, they wouldn't have gotten to college that
1606,
early, you're right.
no,
Yeah.
No, that's what, you said university, I didn't think I ever.
But when you
mentioned-
said 17 something for that school in Maryland, that was kind of like.
Yeah, okay, okay. Oh, anti-Catholic sentiment was present from the very, very, very beginning. And it continued on forever, and it even reached into our United States Senate, which I'll get to a little bit later on. They burned the churches and the convents and anything it had to do, especially in Maryland, since that was the state, the Catholic state for Catholics migrated to, but then the Italians and the Irish, they went where, they went to New York but it was Maryland that seemed to get most of the problems trying to maintain the churches and the nunneries and the priest's house and anything that had to do with the Catholics. And of course, they murdered the priests and the nuns too. Okay, the Puritans, they were members of the Church of England, and they had two separate. One of them split because they just couldn't stand anything that had to do with the Catholic Church. The other part of the Puritans, the other sect of the Puritans tolerated the Catholics, but didn't, punish them or try to get rid of anything like the original Puritans that belonged to England. And they came between 1630 and 1640 in Plymouth Colony and Massachusetts Bay Colony. And the reformers, the Church of England, they wanted to purify the church of all remaining Roman Catholic teachings and practices. Clerical vestments, kneeling to receive communion, making the sign of the cross. Little things like that, but they just could not stand anything that was Catholic. They just wanted to get rid of all of it.
And what period of time was that?
1630, 1640, because it was an ongoing thing. The people the Puritans, they wanted to escape the control, the Catholic control, It was the Catholics kind of the mind control thing. The Puritans just had to get out from under, but then they went to their own form of control too. They controlled their own people. You remember that famous book had the end.
Crucible.
Yeah, that
The Scarlet
Right,
Letter.
correct. What is it?
The Scarlet Letter.
The
Oh,
Scarlet
Scarlet,
Letter.
that's another one.
Yeah, the
Crucible.
Crucible won the Scarlet Letter, but
The same
Well,
witch
actually-
trials.
The Puritans really.
The witch hunt, I mean, they
Oh,
did
yeah.
that. It's the first witch hunt, not the one from them.
I didn't get into the witch hunting part because, well, I just didn't get into it. I don't. Okay, Ella, let's see. The Irish and the Catholic, the Irish and the Italians really started coming to the United States in droves. And especially the Italians, they wanted schools and churches to be built to accommodate their religion, and they were instrumental in getting a lot of the parochial schools established for the children. Of course, the Irish, they would unite and band and stop fighting amongst themselves long enough to get churches and schools going. So it was a big influx there, the 1830s and 1840s, when the Catholic Church in the United States really started growing. Now, you mentioned did you mention Fordham?
Fordham, I did not.
Okay, it
Back
says
in
in
New
New York
York.
State, 1841. I was a little bit amazed at that, 1841, that's rather early.
They established a college down in Mobile, Alabama in 1832. That's still there, it's Spring Hill College.
What,
The Jesuits.
the Jesuits,
The
the
Jesuits.
Jesuits did. I don't know who established, I haven't got it written here for me. Is that the Jesuits? The
Yes.
Jesuits?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But William and Mary was there for a long time before that, 200 years.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, it's really old.
Okay, University of Notre Dame was established 1842.
Yep.
Okay, then the Catholic University of America, 1887 in Washington, D.C. That's really early. Well, okay, Elizabeth Ann Seton, she's one of my heroines.
Seton Hall.
I've been there.
Have you,
Yes.
where?
Where she was, she's
Oh,
still
in
there.
Maryland?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a convert.
She is.
She was very instrumental in increasing the parochial school system throughout Maryland, and then she advanced, and she founded the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph, which is an offshoot of what St. Vincent de Paul. He's the one that established the Sisters of Charity for the poor when he was still in France. But she established the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph. Those are the nuns that taught me back in Dayton, Ohio. They were good. She was burned out many times with her schools and even her own private home. And she had been married. Her husband died, and I think she had like 7 or 8 children. She had a whole bunch of them. But then she became a nun. Yeah, after her order.
She formed her own order with the little hats that.
Yeah.
She did what now?
She formed her own order and they go
Well,
skate.
she had enough daughters to do it with. huh?
Yeah. See, the Sisters of Charity was one, but she found the Sisters of Charity at St. Joseph. So that was kind of an offshoot of the original Sisters of Charity.
Yeah.
And she was the first citizen to be canonized. They made a movie of her,
Right.
and it was pretty good. She converted to Catholicism in
And
1805.
you said her name was Seton?
S-E-T,
S-E-T.
Elizabeth Ann
Elizabeth
Seton.
Ann Seton.
Her life is really good.
She's a saint, isn't
Another
she,
one
the
of my
Catholic
good
Church?
ones is
Yes.
Mother
Also Episcopal.
Cabrera.
Came from.
She's good. Okay, yeah, St. Vincent de Paul founded the first charity for the poor by 1612. That's really good. And our first U.S. Cardinal, John McCluskey, in New York, and got James Gibbons in Baltimore.
When was that?
The first U.S. Cardinal, John McCluskey, in New York. and James Gibbon, another cardinal in Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland was kind of like the seat of everything Catholic. It just seemed to roll out of Maryland because that's where so many of
You don't have a date.
the nuns.
You don't have a date,
I don't
do you?
have any, no, I don't have any dates on that. The first seminary was erected in 1791 at St. Mary's University in Baltimore. The university, by John Carroll, okay, the University of Baltimore. That was 1791. Georgetown University, 1789, Notre Dame, 1842. University of Dayton, 1850, my hometown.
Dayton,
Dayton, Ohio.
that Catholic school, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah, it was established by the Marianists.
Yep.
It was very, very small. And as a side note, the University of Dayton had a basketball coach named Tom Blackburn. Now, the NIT, National Invitational Tournament, was established long before the big dance was ever established,
It was the thing.
The NIT was it. Tom Blackburn took the University of Dayton and taught everybody how to play basketball who went to the NIT.
Yep.
They played the first game on the first day. They went all the way to the very last day. And some heathen school, some heathen college out there. It wasn't, there were two heathen colleges. Who were they?
That was even before my time.
Salt
Dorothy.
Lake,
You got
Salt
me
Lake City, Salt Lake, who were the Mormons? Okay, now the other one. Who's the other?
Brigham Young?
Brigham Young, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
That school there is what beat the, now this is back in 1950s.
Oh, I should
Yeah,
remember that.
but side note of my school.
Here you go.
I have a side note question. My grandfather was Roman Catholic. He was fourth degree knight like I am. And he was principal of basic high school in Henderson, Nevada in the early 50s. And when he got there, the LDS and the Catholics were fighting each other. The students were gang warfare.
Latter-day Saints?
The LDS and Catholics were fighting with each other, gangs,
Wow.
in Henderson, Nevada. And my grandfather was a smart man. He was a tough man. He made peace with them. At his funeral in '85, a Mormon elder and a Catholic priest did eulogies for him.
Wow.
And so this stuff goes back, of course, 100 years or so, the tension. But it's interesting what you're saying. He was revered on both sides of the spiritual.
What was his name?
John Dooley.
This word of it.
No, there's a Tom Dooley in Michigan. But actually, I'm
He didn't wanna
related.
hang- he didn't hang his head
I'm
there.
related barely by Tom Dooley, but I thought it was interesting because I'm sorry I interrupted. I'm not sure it's relevant to the class, but yeah,
That was
yeah,
good, yeah.
yeah,
It'd be better to be related to Tom Dooley than Derek around here.
yeah, or the guy, the coach in Georgia. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, now, let's see. What good it did him, I don't know, but I got it written down in 1650, the Puritans outlawed Catholicism.
How?
They just say, they don't exist, nobody paid attention to them.
No.
Okay, the first Catholic hospital was back in 1915. Why I got that, I don't know. Okay.
Where, Dorothy, the first Catholic hospital? Do you remember?
How would I know that? I didn't do a lot of good research and stuff in this area. I just would see something and I'd write it down. Maybe I'd go back and check
That's
it
fine.
out further,
Thank you.
but I didn't. Okay, I got here the Vatican and U.S. relations. This is where things really erupt. Now, when the United States became its own country, 13 colonies united. We were a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That was just new. Because all the countries were run by monarchs. And to have, there were no countries that were controlled I mean, that the people had a voice in saying how the country was gonna be run. See, this was the great experiment, and no one think they were gonna make it. And even our founding fathers, they wrote the rules and regulations as they went along. They didn't have a how-to book back then, and they established they made some mistakes, so what? But they did a pretty good job as far as a democracy probably is not the best form of government, but to me it's way ahead of whatever comes next. It's a whole lot better than being controlled by a tyrant or a despot or, someone that's just going, one man, one control. That's what people have against the Catholic Church today, is that, you're not a democracy. You have one man leading you, the Pope.
In the presence of Christ, though. The Pope represents Christ on earth.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna
see,
say-
now some of these are very narrow-minded,
Yeah.
and they got a mental problem to begin with. I just say, for some reason or other, it has worked for all these hundreds of years. If it was that bad, we would have been out of business a long time ago. So, yeah, go
The
ahead.
evangelicals, I was an evangelical, we have no authority to tell us what to do in case of so-and-so or whatever problem happened to show up at that moment. We all go to an authority and he will consult the cardinals and then everybody else, the bishops and stuff, and then it will come down to us in a good answer because they pray through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I think there's having been Episcopal and Lutheran prior to being Catholic last year, I was confirmed last year, I find more balance in Catholic theology than I do in Protestant theology. I think there's more checks and balance inside of it. Even though we get complained as Catholics about our authority structure, I don't see it that way. I see a more balanced approach.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My husband said one of the greatest things that I've ever heard, ever came out of his mouth. That I was just stunned. It was one morning.
Other than I love you.
One morning, Sunday morning after breakfast, I had, after mass, and he was very quiet. And all of a sudden, he said, Tom was a Lutheran and died in the war of Lutheran. He was baptized, confirmed, everything, but all through the Lutheran church, and he was an acolyte and all stuff. And when he was in the Navy, he went to Sunday services whenever he could, and if it wasn't Lutheran, he would go to some other. But what he said, all of a sudden he says, the Catholic Church is the only church that's ever got it right.
Really?
That, I was so stunned by that, because Tom was never a deep thinker. but I just sat there, I didn't say a word, because it was so profound, what could I say? But I haven't, because that's been, oh God, I don't know how many years ago, but that just stayed with me, that he would come up with something like that. And it's true, we've had our problems in the Catholic Church, and we've had some bad leaders, some indifferent leaders, and so, there was one pope, I don't remember who he was, he just got fed up and walked off the job. He did, I don't want to be pope anymore, so, our churches,
It's made up of feelings.
yeah, been up and down. Okay, now, in 1867, this was after the Civil War, this is where the U.S. Congress steps in. They passed legislation banning any future funding by the U.S. diplomatic corps for any U.S. diplomats to go to the Vatican. The United States was not going to fund any more people going to the Vatican as representatives of the United States. So therefore, we had no representation at the Vatican starting in 1867. And this was due to the fact, Lincoln's assassination, 1864, one of the people that was hanged,
The Surratt.
Mary Surratt. Okay, she was convicted of participating in, because after they killed John Wilkes Booth, they traced everything back, and he went to a boarding house, and Mary Surratt ran the boarding house, and this and that and the other thing. Okay, she had a Catholic priest who came and ministered to her, heard her confession, and the U.S. Senate picked up on that and said that since she was Catholic and she participated in Lincoln's assassination, we're going to cut off all future funding for anyone to go to the Vatican.
And there was never any evidence that she actually knew anything about it.
That's
No.
What do you think? Yeah.
that she supposedly said she didn't know it, she wasn't.
There was never any evidence that she
There was no evidence, and I
Not-
think she's the first woman that was ever executed.
That's correct.
Yeah. So,
That was just revenge.
Was John Wilkes Booth Catholic?
it didn't return, our relationship with the Vatican didn't return until 1984.
What?
Yep.
1984.
Say that again.
We had a Catholic president in 1960.
I know.
Yeah, but we did not have formal relations with the
I
Vatican.
just meant, he didn't
Why?
reestablish them?
Nope.
Why?
You see, he
Nope.
and Jackie went to the,
They were in the Vatican.
Yeah, I'm
to the
sure.
Vatican, but then we did, yeah.
Why did they not have relations with the Vatican for all that time? As the
Because
United-
the U.S. Senate was not going to fund any representative of the United States to be established at the Vatican as a diplomatic.
So Reagan reestablished,
Yes.
and he wasn't Catholic, was he?
Nope.
No. I'm surprised JFK didn't.
He
Tore
did.
down the wall and then reestablished Cambridge.
If JFK had done it, the first thing they would have thought of, the first thing
Yeah.
that would have been done is he'd been
It
accused
probably
of.
was not political for him to do it, you're right.
Yeah.
The common joke was when he lost the nomination for the presidency the first time around is they sent a telegram to the Pope, unpack.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, but Reagan was the great communicator, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but
Tore down walls everywhere.
It's not the president who gets to establish the relationships, it's the
The
Senate
Senate,
Yeah.
they
forbade.
are the ones that make
Yeah,
the
so it's
rules.
not even the president.
Yeah,
Who had
the
that
president has a great
responsibility.
impact on what they can do.
He has
Say,
veto power.
I will veto what you want passed if
Right.
you
Yeah, but
don't
they
do
didn't
what I
do
want.
that much back then.
They can recommend and legislation and try to get it through, but then they can also, like Gary said, veto it too if they don't like it. But, it wasn't reestablished, what did I say?
1984.
1984, when they had an ambassador return to the Vatican, and then the Holy See appointed an apostolic delegate, and it was an Italian, I can't pronounce Italian, so I didn't write down his name. I should have put down, you know, I should have said something like Joe or something, but I didn't. Okay, well, it's the first president to visit the Holy See. I got here is Woodrow Wilson in 1919. This was right after World War I, when the war ended in 1918. And then Eisenhower was next, and then Kennedy. Eisenhower went in 1959, and Kennedy in 1963. I remember seeing film footage. I remember seeing that on TV.
Couldn't have been long before he got shot.
In 1960, yeah, he was shot in November 22nd, whatever, and then many. And then the first pope to visit the United States was Pope Paul VI. Do you remember, anybody remember his visit? Do you remember that, Jean?
No,
No?
but before that, he was papal nuncio, and he was Cardinal Montini, and he was, I remember he spoke at graduation at Notre Dame the same year, at the same time
You
that,
talking about Pope Paul VI?
yes, he became Pope Paul VI. He was Cardinal Montini at the time, and he spoke at the graduation at Notre Dame in 1960, along with President Eisenhower.
Oh, that's a pretty good
Wow.
lineup there, boy.
Yeah,
Pope and president.
a future pope at the time.
Well, I don't, okay. Splitting hairs.
Okay, the United States was involved in quite a few wars, as you all know, and during this time, of course, there was little or no exchange of diplomatic, I think they had couriers or so forth, they had communications of somehow, but of course, with the American Revolution, they had, the Vatican hadn't even recognized us yet at that time. The War of 1812, that was one of the silliest wars that they knew.
Most of them don't make a lot of
But,
sense.
you know, we beat Great Britain down to they were on their knees in the American Revolution. And we had no army, no navy, no ships, no armaments, no nothing, and we beat them.
Yeah, well, actually, the French beat them.
Oh, yeah, well, see, there had been
And they're
for the French to
Catholic,
come sailing in at the Potomac to bar the.
Yeah, the French beat them in 1812
I
too.
wanted to ignore that because the French people get on my nerves. But then, you know, even Great Britain came back in 1812 and attacked us. And by this time, you know, we were a country and we had a lot of stuff to back us up. And I'm always amazed at this War of 1812.
They did burn the White House.
Oh, that's the only thing that really came, and they bombarded Fort McHenry, then we got, oh, say, can you see, we got that wonderful national anthem out of that. But that's the only two things really that happened, and they were beaten, not in the East, they were beaten, well, the war actually kind of died down, but in New Orleans, Louisiana, Andrew Jackson, Tennessee, he, with his little ragtag army of about 4,000 soldiers, and they were all volunteers, and they were some of the.
And a French pilot.
I'm getting ready to say, he had a privateer, he was, what was his?
Lafitte.
Yeah,
Jean Lafitte.
Jean Lafitte, yeah, he was for sale, he would go to the
Hey,
side that was.
we bought him, I'm all right with it.
Whoever had the most money.
By the way, that was after the peace treaty had been signed.
That's correct.
Yeah, but see, the war was over by the time, but then they, you know, communications, they didn't have any tweeting, so forth. So they didn't even know. But the British had 10,000 troops coming in from the Gulf, and Andrew Jackson had his 4,000 troops up on the embankment up here, and he was looking down. And the British soldiers came, oh, well, this has nothing to do with the Catholic.
And the briars went, and they ran through the briars, and they ran through the
Yeah,
river, and
oh.
they ran through the bushes where the rabbits couldn't go.
It was an absolute, destruction.
It's American history and Catholic history go together,
Yeah,
sweetheart.
they were just, they were just annihilated. What a horrible thing. Okay. St. Patrick's Cathedral was established in 1858. The first cornerstone was laid, and that church was built by private donations. The Holy See, the Vatican, supposedly had nothing to do with St. Patrick's. All the money came from people here in the United States. They wanted a church that, I guess the Irish, and the Irish were starting to make inroads in the political arena and in where some of the money was, whether it was good money or bad money. And of course, we can't forget the mafia. They had a big
Well,
influence.
St. Patrick's indicates it was more Irish than Italian.
Oh, yeah, much more
Yeah.
Irish, but the mothers and wives of the members of the mafia, they had a big influence on the Catholic Church, and they were making donations left and right to buy their way into heaven for their husbands and sons and stuff. But the mafia was rather prevalent, and of course, whenever you looked at anything up on the internet involving the Catholic Church, you have to read between the lines, or you have to really wonder what in the world they're saying, because there's a lot of double talk. And it can cause you to be suicidal. Trying to figure out what they mean, what are they talking about, because they wanted to avoid the truth. Now the Catholic Church in some of these smaller parishes turned a blank, closed eye on what the mafia was doing. Of course, the Italian, the mafia was established in Sicily, not in Italy, and the Italian people resented being associated with the mafia, because it was the Sicilian people who were the really
Cosa
nasty,
Nostra.
yeah, the dons. They were some of the strongly in control.
I think a lot of I would imagine that a lot of the distrust and hatred of Catholics in general were because of the mafia, and also there was, I don't know what the Irish mafia was called, but they had their influx
Yeah, the
too.
Jewish mafia.
And then we had the cops, who were the Irish police officers, who at times were as brutal as the bad guys they were fighting. So I mean, I would think that the Catholics had a lot of bad pub, so to speak, because of those things right there.
Yeah, they had to overcome a lot, but then their own actions sometimes caused their own problems. With different things now, in the South, they had the KKK, and this was another form of Catholic persecution. And of course, they when I was very young, they said KKK meant Catholic coons and